Hello and welcome back to F1 Every Week. I am your host Ben Wevel, and today I'm going to be covering all of the most recent car launches, the controversial sacking of former race director Michael Masi, and more. You can listen to the podcast on the streaming platform of your choice, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts, all of which are linked below. So without further ado, let's get into episode 43. So let's begin with some of the biggest and most important for the landscape of F1 in the future news, that being the sacking of race director Michael Masi after his controversial interpretation of the rulebook at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix last year, in which Max Verstappen won out over Lewis Hamilton in the most dramatic of fashions. Instead of a sole race director, Niels Wittig and Eduardo Freitas, who have experience working in various echelons of the sport, will alternate the role of race director between them. A third senior advisor, Herbie Blash, who was previously deputy to former race director Charlie Whiting, will also oversee the off-track decision-making. A third layer of aid will be in place from the first pre-season testing in Barcelona, with a virtual race control room in place to further help the race director, akin to the work of VAR in football, says the FIA president Mohammed Ben Sulayem. Furthermore, direct radio communication between the team and race director will no longer be in place, in order to shield the race director from pressure in the decision-making process. However, teams will be allowed to ask questions to the race director in accordance with a well-defined and non-intrusive process, says Sulayem. It will be interesting to see who will push the boundaries of this process this year, and more importantly, who it is that is compiling and policing this process. In the end, the main question that will be discussed following this announcement is if it was right to remove Michael Masi from his position. He has been under constant pressure all season, often berated by other teams, who demanded that their driver was always in the right. Frankly, I would not have been surprised to hear that Michael Masi had walked out himself after last year's toxicity. But the point remains that that role has always been and will always be a pressure cooker, and he did not handle the pressure well on that night in Abu Dhabi. New radio messages seeming to connote that he cracked at the demands of the Red Bull team, though nothing will ever be conclusive. Despite feeling that he was hard done by this season, there would have been an uproar from Hamilton fans had he stayed on for 2022, and the controversy would have lingered over him rather than being looked back on as a mistake. To conclude, I think that this was the right decision, and it was wise for the FIA to shake up the structure of this role, as it is clear that it was not working. Now for the car reveals, and first was Williams, who on the 15th revealed the FW44, another entirely blue car. How original. But more concerning is its lack of livery acumen and its blank car, with fewer major sponsors than some other teams, noticeably 0 sponsors whatsoever on the side pods. Similarly to Red Bull, the team has decided to keep some of their technical innovations under wraps for the time being. But more was revealed about the car upon its shakedown at a stormy Silverstone on the same day as its release. The most noticeable difference between the FW44 and rival cars is its massive air inlets, which introduce the compact and abruptly ending side pods, which connote a car focused on maximising airflow off the top of the side pods. The goal for the future of Williams from CEO Jos Capito is clear: success. But Williams fans may have to wait for the car to be right in amongst the front pack once again. The drivers also seem to be optimistic about the coming season. Alex Albon and Nicholas Latifi both excited for the closer racing that the new season should bring for every team. Alex is clearly delighted to be back with a drive, the Thai driver missing out on a seat for 2021 after being dropped by Red Bull, noting that the team has been super nice so far. I hope that good things come the way of Williams this year, as after 3 years of languishing at or near the back, it was a monumental step in the right direction for the team to pick up some points along with a fluke podium in Belgium last year. So maybe they can transfer that positivity into returning to the midfield once again in 2022. Moving on, Ferrari were next to drop their challenger, the F175, on the 17th of February. And before we begin with an analysis of the car, I need to take a moment to appreciate the beauty of the most recent Ferrari livery. The matte red is just divine, but still, in my opinion, not quite as perfect as the McLaren. Anyway, the car itself is most notable for its community-dubbed children's slide side pods, which are officially known as valleys. The design of the side pods is similar to the Aston Martins, with grills on the pods used as an outlet, but the aforementioned valleys create a mysterious debate, as there is no clear reason for their formations, the valley angling itself upwards at the end, an unusual feature. Like the Williams, the airflow from the undercut at the front of the side pods is immediately cut out by the boxy formation of the back of this element. It will be interesting to see if this brave design will pay off when it hits the track in Barcelona. Furthermore, Ferrari seem to have gone for a very pointy front wing, with the nose attached to the first element of the wing rather than detached to improve airflow, as we have seen from the Williams. In terms of the team itself, they have had a huge resurgence since last year's nosedive in performance, caused by their engine and overall pace slumping due to the plethora of investigations into Ferrari for operating their engine illegally in 2019. But Ferrari were back at the top of the midfield last year, with a third-place Constructors' Championship finish and Carlos Sainz finishing in an astounding P5 in his first year with the team, completing all of the goals teammate Mattia Binotto set out at the start of the season. The drivers seem to have a mixed attitude to the launch, with Carlos Sainz praising the livery before praying that the car will be fast, and Charles Leclerc sharing that his expectations are high with the car this year. Ferrari has taken its hits before, but they have always been there next year ready to make amends, and I think that the poor performance of the car 2 seasons ago has further inspired the team in red to get back on top of the sport. And with the current form and these unpredictable technical regulations, it may be the year when they make it happen. Finally, for the car launches this week were Mercedes, whose W13, which dropped on the 18th, they hope will give them a 9th Constructors' Championship, which means that they will be tied with Williams as the second most successful constructor of all time, only behind Ferrari with 16, bearing in mind that the Italian team has been in the sport nearly 5 times longer than Mercedes, as well as regaining the Drivers' Championship, which of course went Red Bull's way last year. This year, Mercedes reintroduced their silver colour palette after 2 years in black, a throwback to Mercedes' first 2 years in the sport, 1954 and 55. Mercedes have gone for a wide front of the side pod, which is swiftly swept downwards and narrowed to accommodate airflow over the side pods. In terms of the nose, it is connected to the first component of the front wing with no slot gap like the Ferrari, but is far less pointy than the F175. The Mercedes also incorporates a large air inlet, which means a less aggressive undercut than has been seen on the Aston Martin. Despite Mercedes having been utterly dominant in the turbo hybrid era, with almost a clean sweep of both championships apart from Verstappen's driver's title last year, this massive regulation change means that nothing is certain. It was put best by team principal of Mercedes, Toto Wolff, who said on launch day, "Past achievements mean nothing, we start from zero." However, there is no denying the might of Mercedes, and despite the field tightening up, I would not be surprised at all to see Mercedes continue their dominance into the new era. Both drivers seem confident as well, Lewis Hamilton citing that the regulation change takes you back to being a kid, also commenting that it was a delight to see the designers of this new car find the best ways of creating a masterpiece. Both Russell and Hamilton hit the track later on Friday, George describing the windy conditions as absolutely crazy, and he also noted that it will be difficult to judge whether or not the car was feeling in the greatest shape at this stage, as the conditions meant a far more cautious approach to the first runnings than the pair might have wanted. I have no doubt that Mercedes will be up there among the best performers this year, but how good they will be compared to the rest cannot be confirmed until testing in Barcelona, and even then, Mercedes are known for not showing their hand, even at testing, preferring to get to proper business at the first race weekend instead. Next this week is news from former team principal of Aston Martin, Otmar Szafnauer, who, after months of rumours and speculation, has been confirmed as the new team principal of Alpine. This follows sweeping structural changes to Alpine, who let go of Martin Bukowski, the former man in the role, earlier this year. This change does not come as a huge shock to anybody, with the potential for this move in the woodworks since November of last year. Otmar is known in the F1 community for taking a struggling Fourth India and turning it into an upper midfield team from a lowly budget. Despite Alpine's 5th place finish in the championship for the past 3 years, the management have clearly set goals of championship domination, and Otmar is certainly the man for the job, as one of the best team principals of the last decade. CEO of Alpine Laurent Rossi claims that hiring Otmar brings Alpine to the next level. Szafnauer also brings with him lucrative deals with BWT, who were previously a title sponsor of then Racing Point, to his new team. This certainly seems like a wise decision from Alpine, who have been struggling to keep a team principal, with 4 in the past 5 seasons, so Otmar seems a long-term and experienced option, who should lead the charge into a new era by Alpine. For our penultimate story this week, it was announced on the 18th that F1 will continue to race at the Circuit of the Americas until 2026. On the calendar since 2012, it has seen some great racing action over the years, it being the deciding race for the Drivers' Championship in both 2015 and 2019, as well as exciting fans with the exhilarating finish to the Grand Prix this year, as Max Verstappen just about held off Lewis Hamilton for the victory. After Miami's addition to the calendar for 2022, it was clear that F1 was going to be staying in the US for a long time, and I am especially pleased to see that one of the best races in the calendar is not left to bake and raced on in the Austin heat. Finally this week, F1 announced that it will be running the sprint race weekend format for 3 races this year, similarly to last year. After it was introduced at the British Grand Prix of last year and used again in Italy and Brazil. The 100-kilometre mini-race held on Saturday before the Grand Prix is an alternative method of setting the grid for Sunday's race and means far more racing action across the weekend. This year, the format will be in place at the Emilia-Romagna, Austrian and Sao Paulo Grand Prix. The points-giving system of the sprint race has been made far more lucrative as well, as the top 8 drivers will now gain points from a good performance in the sprint race. Valtteri Bottas secured 2 of the 3 sprint race victories last year, but he tied on points gained from the sprint with Max Verstappen, both of which gained 7. Without the sprint points accounted for, Lewis Hamilton would only be